So I suppose it'll be interesting to just explore a bit more about the current product integrations and how AI is actually already in a lot of people's worlds. They just don't realize it. For years and years and years, people have been using financial tools that recognize invoices and process invoices automatically. And if you think what that's doing, it's actually taking a PDF of an invoice, and based on machine learning, the computer will look for where the invoice number is, or where the amount is, or where the VAT amount is, etc. is. And so a lot of products that procurement people are already using are actually already largely AI driven. And I think that in its own right is a revelation to some people, because they just think computers are clever, but actually AI is already embedded in our world. And so if you're, for a procurement person, a bit nervous about AI, just think about some of the things you do day to day. They've probably already got automation and business process stuff in it, which computers are helping out with. That is AI. And your nervousness is probably unfounded. You don't need to worry about it too much. But if you're getting involved in the procurement of an AI tool, there's a lot of things you need to think about. As we sort of discussed, there's probably a little checklist of things that are worth working through to just make sure you're not going to get yourself into hot water when you're buying. Some of the things like, how is it, what sort of AI is it? Is it basic machine learning, which is largely sort of rules-based? So, it'll follow a set of rules. As a procurement person, you can ask, what are those rules based on? So you can start understanding how decisions are made. But if it's something like generative AI, it's a bit more complicated. It's not just rules, it's taking or consuming significant chunks of data. And so the sort of questions you need to ask with those sorts of things are, what data was your AI model trained on? Because if inherently it's got some biases in it, and we'll talk about some of the ethical implications in the next video, you need to steer clear of that, or certainly be aware of what the implications could be. So checklist number one is really understanding what sort of AI is it? Is it machine learning? Is it generative AI or large language models? And armed with that information, you can probably dig deeper into how it's designed, how it works, and make sure you understand what that product or tool is being used for. The second thing is really understanding that data. Now, previously mentioned AI being the average of the internet. If your AI tool is based on the internet and has been trained on the internet, then that's its data set, which is obviously a big data set. But if you think about what the internet is made up of, it's probably pages that have been written largely by Western or American-based cultures, or people with allegiances to America, or people who've got access, relatively wealthy people, who've got access to the internet. And so a lot of cultures won't be represented on the internet, and therefore, from an AI perspective, you've got a machine that is trained on content that doesn't necessarily represent the whole of humanity. And that might be okay for your application, but being aware of that and asking the question of your provider, how was your product trained, will just give you the insight and transparency about the sort of things that the product might do, or decisions it might make that will support whatever you're trying to do from a business process perspective. So question number 2 on your checklist is, what sort of data is your product trained on? How was your product trained? And understanding that will raise some risks. Clearly, as a procurement person, you need to make sure you understand how it works, and you need to prove that it works. Quite a lot of people are buying AI stuff at the moment just because it's got AI in the title. It's bonkers. So do proof of concepts, do trials. Make sure you understand that it's going to work in the context of the data you've got. Our previous segment, previous day's filming was all about data and data preparation. Make sure that the data you've got in your business can be consumed by that AI, and the AI can be trained on it such that it makes decisions in the context of your world and not the internet. And so question number 2 is just making sure you understand that it's going to work. Prove that it's going to work before you buy it. That's clearly an obvious thing. Another question which is sensible, and it comes a little bit onto the risks, is can humans override what the AI does. Now you start getting a little bit Isaac Asimov and iRobot at this stage, but ultimately humans need to retain control of whatever happens in a business process. And although you can use AI to automate mundane tasks, I don't think you'd want to allow an AI machine to decide whether your life support machines can be switched off or not. So understand the boundaries of the decision making and understand what humans have got control over. And if the machine makes a wrong decision, understand how you're going to learn from that decision or override that decision so you can step in and take responsibility for whatever the machine does. Ultimately, in commercial terms, the AI company that you're buying the product from is not going to take responsibility for the decisions it makes. So you're going to need to make sure you understand where your liabilities are and make sure that you've got really good control over what the outcomes are of whatever business process you're looking to use AI for. And finally, model transparency is a really critical thing. And in the next video, we'll talk a little bit about the risks and ethics associated with AI. It's a really cool thing, AI, but you need to understand how it's been created. If you have an AI engine that's making decisions based on some really fundamental problems, you're going to be associated, your business will be associated with those sorts of decisions. And so transparency of the model is really key. Now, companies like Microsoft and OpenAI and Anthropic are all pretty transparent about, to a certain extent, about how their AI products are developed. But they're not going to be able to articulate to every single customer, because they've got millions of customers, the specific and nuanced bits of their AI engine in the context of their business. So maybe looking at some of the more open source based or some of the more publicly available AI engines would be sensible. Don't just default to using the big boys is sort of what I'm saying here. Smaller companies are a lot more readily available to explain how their world works and what is going to happen, in terms of how their models are designed and therefore how things will react in certain situations. And in that context, it's worth investigating transparency and challenging the products that you're buying in that context. Just one little sort of thing about example products that I particularly like. I do talks to businesses about AI deployment and stuff like that. And I do it with a colleague of mine, Tim Hearn, and he was involved in a particularly cool project to do with AI that was called Be My Eyes. Now, he was a volunteer and it was an application on his mobile phone. And the application was, if you're a blind person, you can point your mobile phone camera at a situation, fire up the Be My Eyes application and press a button and say to a bunch of volunteers around the world, please explain what's happening here, or please read this sign for me, or just be my eyes. You're a blind person, borrow somebody else's eyes effectively via the camera on their mobile phone. Now that worked for a number of years. It's a really cool application to help with disabled people or blind people, really give them more confidence in the real world. That Be My Eyes application has now evolved to use AI. So instead of connecting a blind person with a volunteer around the world, the camera on the mobile phone now uses AI to investigate or understand what is going on for the user of the application, and gives the user of the application some advice on what they should do in certain situations. And there's some really interesting example videos. If you Google Be My Eyes, it's really cool what AI can be used for. And the reason I'm bringing it up is, it has some really good connotations that AI products can do some really great things. We just need to be aware that when you're buying it, in that situation, clearly you've got an end user who's got accessibility questions. They've got a bunch of reasons why they should be nervous about using the app. If you give a blind person some advice to do a certain situation or to respond in a certain situation, and it's based on the wrong advice, there's quite a lot of liabilities there. So some of these AI applications are doing some fairly fundamental things. And as a procurement professional, you need to understand what it's going to be used for, understand how it's going to respond in different situations, and then make sure you're preparing the risks and understanding the risks of what could go wrong if that AI engine makes the wrong decision. But reading the checklist from my notes was down by my feet. I think in reality, you need to understand what sort of AI is it? Is it machine learning, or is it something more complex like LLMs? What data is it trained on? What's its understanding, to make sure you can get your head around whether it's been trained on something that's not appropriate. Does it work? Do a proof of concept. Make sure that you do that before you spend lots of money. How does it handle bias and accuracy of data? Can it be overridden in terms of human interactions? And if an AI engine makes a decision, what's the process for picking up errors and making sure you fix them? And fundamentally, how transparent is the model, so you understand how it works and make sure you can comment on that. And armed with those sort of main checklists of questions, you should be able to buy AI in a way that surfaces all the risks, and you can have proper conversations about the commercial realities.